Wow, I can't believe this.
Denise stands alone in the empty Korean barbecue restaurant in Atlanta. It's 11 p.m. The lights are bright, but the place feels quiet and cold. She's staring at the money on the table in front of her. Her hands won't stop shaking as she counts the bills for the third time. $312. Exactly what the bill said. Not a single penny more. For 2 straight hours, she just served 5 Korean men dressed in expensive dark suits. They look serious, dangerous even, but she gave them her best service like she always does. And now this. Zero tip. Her eyes start to fill with tears. She's thinking about her 2 kids at home. The bills she can't pay. Her son needs new shoes. The heater is broken. She takes a deep breath and starts clearing the dirty plates from the table. Her heart feels so heavy. Then she picks up the last plate, the one that was sitting right in front of the leader. There's something under it. A piece of paper folded. Her hands shake harder now as she opens it. She reads the words and her whole body freezes. The note says to look under the napkin holder. She reaches over with trembling fingers and lifts it up. There's a thick envelope underneath. She opens it. Stacks of $100 bills. She counts them. Once. Twice. 3 times because she can't believe what she's seeing. $20,000. Her legs go weak and she drops into the chair, unable to breathe. What was in that note that changed everything? Hit that subscribe button right now for more incredible stories like this one. Tomorrow, I'm dropping another story you absolutely won't want to miss. Your support helps us bring you more powerful stories like this. Before we get into what happened, I want to give a huge thank you to our amazing viewers from the United States, Australia, Mexico, France, the United Kingdom, Canada, Brazil, Japan, Jamaica, and so many other countries around the world. You all mean everything to us. Your comments, your likes, your shares, they keep us going. This story is for you. Now let's get into it. To understand what this moment meant to Denise, you need to know her story. You need to know what her life was like before that night. Denise Williams was 28 years old. She was a single mother raising 2 beautiful kids on her own. Her daughter had just turned 7, and her son was 5. Every morning, Denise woke up at 5 a.m. while her children were still sleeping. She got dressed quietly in the dark, kissed them on their foreheads, and left for her first job at the grocery store across town. She worked at that grocery store from 6 a.m. until 2 p.m., stocking shelves, running the register, helping customers find what they needed. Her feet would already be hurting by lunchtime, but she couldn't stop. At 2:30 p.m., she rushed home to check on her kids. Her neighbor, Miss Beverly, an older lady who lived next door, watched them during the day. Denise paid her what she could, which wasn't much, but Miss Beverly had a good heart. Denise would spend an hour with her children, help them with homework, make them dinner, listen to them talk about their day at school. Those 60 minutes were the best part of her day. But at 4 p.m., she had to leave again. She put on her work uniform for the Korean barbecue restaurant and headed out for her second shift. She worked at the restaurant from 5 p.m. until closing time, which was usually around 11 p.m. or midnight, serving tables, taking orders, making sure customers were happy. By the time she got home, it was past midnight. She would shower, maybe eat something if she wasn't too tired, and check on her sleeping babies one more time. She usually fell into bed around 1 a.m. Then at 5 a.m., the alarm would go off and she'd do it all over again. 4 hours of sleep. That's all she got most nights. Sometimes less. This was Denise's life. Every single day. No breaks. No days off. 2 jobs just to keep a roof over their heads and food on the table. Denise had grown up in the rough parts of South Atlanta, the neighborhoods where opportunities were hard to find and trouble was easy to get into. Her own mother had raised her alone, just like Denise was doing now with her kids. Her mother had worked 3 jobs sometimes, cleaning offices at night, working at a laundromat during the day, doing whatever she could to survive. Denise remembered watching her mother come home exhausted, barely able to stand. But her mother never complained. She just kept going. She told Denise over and over, "Baby, we might not have much money, but we have our dignity. We have our character. You treat people right. You work hard at whatever you do. That's what matters." Those words stuck with Denise her whole life. When her mother passed away from a heart attack 3 years ago, Denise made a promise over her grave. She promised she would break this cycle. Her children would have better. They would go to college. They would have opportunities she never had. That's why Denise worked herself to the bone. That's why she smiled even when her feet were screaming in pain. That's why she treated every customer at that restaurant like they were the most important person in the world. Despite how tired she was, Denise was good at her job. Really good. She remembered regular customers' names and their favorite dishes. She knew who liked extra kimchi and who couldn't handle spicy food. She made small talk that was genuine, not fake. People could tell she actually cared. The owners of the restaurant, Mr. and Mrs. Kim, were an elderly Korean couple in their 70s. They had owned the place for 15 years. They didn't speak perfect English, and Denise didn't speak any Korean, but somehow they understood each other. They treated Denise like she was their own daughter. Mrs. Kim would sometimes pack extra food for Denise to take home to her kids. Mr. Kim would slip her a little extra money during the holidays. When Denise's heater broke last winter, Mr. Kim tried to give her money to fix it. She refused because she didn't want charity, but she never forgot the offer. These people had good hearts. But even with 2 jobs and the Kim's kindness, Denise was barely surviving. The rent on her small 2-bedroom apartment was going up. Her son needed new shoes because his feet were growing fast, and his current ones had holes in the bottom. Her daughter kept talking about piano lessons because her music teacher said she had talent. But piano lessons cost money Denise didn't have. There was a stack of bills on Denise's kitchen table that grew taller every week. Electric bill, water bill, medical bills from when her son had an ear infection last month. She paid what she could, when she could, but she was always behind. Some nights, Denise would sit at that table after her kids were asleep and just cry. Not loud crying. Quiet tears running down her face while she tried to figure out which bill to pay and which one to delay another month. But the next morning, she would wake up at 5 a.m. and do it all over again. Because that's what her mother taught her. You keep going. You work hard. You treat people with respect. You take pride in whatever job you have, whether you're cleaning toilets or running a company. Denise believed that dignity didn't come from how much money you made. It came from how you treated other people and how you did your job. So even though she was a waitress making minimum wage plus tips, she did her job with excellence. Every single day. That's who Denise was. That's the woman standing in that restaurant on that November night. It was a cold November evening in Atlanta. The kind of cold that made you pull your jacket tight and hurry from your car to wherever you were going. Inside the Korean barbecue restaurant, the heating system was working overtime, making the air warm and a little humid. The smell of grilled meat and garlic filled the space. It was almost closing time. The restaurant usually closed at 10 p.m. on weeknights, and it was already 9:30. Most of the dinner crowd had left. There were only 3 tables still occupied. A young couple on a date, sharing bulgogi and laughing at something on one of their phones. An older man eating alone, reading a newspaper while he finished his soup. And a family of 4 packing up their leftovers and getting ready to leave. Denise was starting to think about closing duties, refilling the salt and pepper shakers, wiping down the menus, sweeping the floor. Mr. and Mrs. Kim had already gone home for the night, trusting Denise to lock up like she did several nights a week. The cook and the dishwasher were in the back, cleaning their stations, ready to leave as soon as the last customers paid their bills. That's when the door opened. 5 men walked in. The cold air rushed in with them before the door closed. These were not the usual customers. Not even close. All 5 of them wore expensive dark suits. The kind of suits you see in movies about powerful businessmen or mob bosses. Tailored perfectly. Dark colors. Crisp white shirts underneath. 4 of them wore sunglasses even though it was nighttime, and they were walking into a restaurant. The 5th man, the one in front, took his sunglasses off as he entered. They moved together in a way that caught your attention. There was no loud talking or laughing. They walked with quiet authority. The kind of presence that makes a room go silent without anyone saying a word. The young couple at their table stopped talking and glanced over. The old man with the newspaper looked up. The family getting ready to leave suddenly moved a little faster. The parents ushering their kids toward the door with their takeout boxes. Denise felt her stomach tighten. She had worked in restaurants long enough to recognize when someone important walked in. But this was different. These men didn't just look important. They looked dangerous. The man leading the group was clearly in charge. He appeared to be in his late 50s. His hair was gray and slicked back neatly. His face was weathered, with lines that told stories of a hard life and difficult decisions. His eyes were sharp, the kind of eyes that missed nothing. When he looked at you, it felt like he was seeing straight through to your thoughts. The other 4 men were younger, maybe in their 30s or 40s. They positioned themselves around the leader naturally, protectively. It was clear they were waiting for his instructions. Denise took a deep breath. Her heart was beating faster than normal. She knew how it felt to be judged based on how you looked. People saw a black woman working as a waitress and made assumptions. They assumed she wasn't educated. They assumed she was lazy or didn't have ambition. They had no idea about her story, her struggles, her dreams for her children. So Denise refused to do the same thing to others. She didn't know who these men were. Maybe they were businessmen. Maybe they were something else. It didn't matter. They were customers, and she would treat them with the same warmth and respect she gave everyone. She grabbed 5 menus and walked to their table with her professional smile in place. "Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome. Please sit anywhere you'd like." The leader looked at her for a long moment. His eyes studied her face. Not in a rude way or a creepy way. More like he was reading something about her, measuring her somehow. He chose a large table in the corner, away from the windows. The other men waited for him to sit first, choosing their seats around him. Denise placed the menus on the table and pulled out her notepad. "Can I start you off with some water? Or would you prefer something else to drink?" The leader spoke. His English was accented but clear. "Water is fine." She brought 5 glasses of ice water to the table, setting them down carefully. "Have you eaten here before? Do you need some time to look at the menu, or would you like me to make some recommendations?" The leader looked directly at her. Those sharp eyes focused completely on her face. "Bring us your best," he said. "Everything. We are very hungry tonight." Denise nodded. "Absolutely. I'll take good care of you." As she walked back toward the kitchen to put in their order, she could hear them speaking to each other in Korean. Their voices were low and serious. She couldn't understand the words, but the tone was all business. The young couple finished their meal quickly and left, leaving a small tip on the table. The old man with the newspaper folded it up, paid at the register, and headed out into the cold night. Within 15 minutes, the 5 men at the corner table were the only customers left in the restaurant. The cook peeked out from the kitchen, looking at the table of men, then at Denise. "You okay out here?" he asked quietly in English mixed with a Korean accent. "I'm fine," Denise assured him. "Just another table." But the dishwasher, a young guy named Tommy who went to community college during the day, came out to fill his water bottle. He glanced at the men and then leaned close to Denise. "Those guys look serious," he whispered. "Like really serious. You think they're connected to something?" Denise shrugged. "I don't know, and it's not my business. I'm here to serve food, not to speculate about customers." Tommy nodded but still looked nervous. He went back to the kitchen. Denise focused on her job. Whatever these men were involved in, whoever they were in their regular lives, right now they were just customers who wanted a good meal. She was going to give them exactly that. For the next 2 hours, Denise worked harder than she had worked in a long time. The order she brought to the kitchen was massive. Bulgogi, the sweet marinated beef that was the restaurant's specialty. Galbi, the short ribs that took time to grill properly. Japchae, the glass noodles with vegetables. Bibimbap, soft tofu soup. Seafood pancakes. Steamed dumplings. And every single side dish the kitchen had available. Kimchi, pickled radishes, seasoned spinach, bean sprouts, fish cakes. The table was going to be completely covered with food. The cook's eyes went wide when he saw the order. "All this for 5 people? That's what they want," Denise said. "They said to bring the best of everything." She started bringing out the dishes. First the side dishes, arranging them carefully on the table. The men watched her work in silence. The leader sat at the head of the table, his posture straight, his hands folded in front of him. The others maintained their serious expressions, occasionally glancing at each other, but mostly staying quiet. Denise made sure the tabletop grill was at the perfect temperature before bringing out the meat. She explained how long each type should cook, though she had a feeling these men knew Korean barbecue well. They nodded but didn't say much. She kept their water glasses filled. Every time a glass was even halfway empty, she was there with the pitcher, refilling it quietly. She checked the grill temperature regularly, adjusting it when needed. She brought out fresh plates when the used ones piled up. She worked smoothly, efficiently, anticipating what they needed before they had to ask. The whole time, she felt the leader's eyes on her. He was watching everything she did. Not in a way that made her uncomfortable, but in a way that made her feel like she was being evaluated. Like she was taking some kind of test she didn't know she had signed up for. He noticed how she placed each dish on the table with care, making sure nothing spilled. He saw how she wiped the edges of the table clean when a bit of sauce dripped. He observed how she smiled genuinely when she asked if everything was okay. Not the fake smile servers sometimes give when they're tired and want to go home. About an hour into the meal, one of the younger men reached for the soy sauce and accidentally knocked over his water glass. Water spread across the table quickly, heading toward some of the food dishes. Denise was at the table in seconds. She had towels in her hand before the water even reached the edge of the table. "No worries at all," she said with a warm smile. "Happens all the time." She soaked up the water quickly, moved the dishes that were in danger, dried everything off, and brought a fresh glass of water. She replaced the wet napkins and made sure none of the food was affected. The whole thing took maybe 30 seconds, and she handled it so smoothly that it barely interrupted their meal. The young man who had knocked over the glass looked embarrassed. "Sorry," he said quietly. It was the first word any of them except the leader had spoken. "Please, don't even think about it," Denise said. "You're all good. Enjoy your meal." The leader said something in Korean to his companions. His tone wasn't angry or critical. It sounded almost like approval. The other men nodded. Denise went back to her station, but she could feel that she had passed some kind of test. She didn't know what it was about, but something had shifted. As the evening went on, the restaurant got quieter and quieter. The cook finished cleaning the kitchen. Tommy finished the dishes. They both came out to tell Denise they were heading home. "You sure you're okay closing alone with them here?" the cook asked, glancing at the table. "I'm fine," Denise said. "You both go home. I've got this." They left through the back door, and Denise was alone in the restaurant with the 5 men. She continued her work. More water refills. Clearing empty plates. Bringing fresh napkins. Her feet were killing her. She had been standing and walking since 6 a.m. that morning, first at the grocery store, now here. Her lower back ached. She could feel a headache starting behind her eyes from exhaustion. But she kept smiling. She kept providing excellent service. Because that's what her mother had taught her. You do your job with pride, no matter how tired you are. No matter who's watching or not watching. The men finally started to slow down. They had eaten an enormous amount of food. The table was covered with empty dishes and plates. They sat back in their chairs, looking satisfied. Denise was mentally calculating the bill in her head. It was going to be big. Over $300 for sure. Maybe more. If they left even a 15% tip, that would be almost $50. If they were generous and left 20%, that would be over $60. $60 would mean she could buy her son those new shoes he needed. She could get her daughter a beginner's music book for piano. She could pay the electric bill that was overdue. She found herself hoping, praying silently. Please let them tip well. Please. After 2 hours of constant service, after taking such good care of them, surely they would recognize that. Surely they would leave something decent. The leader caught her eye and raised his hand slightly. The universal signal that they were ready for the check. Denise went to the register and printed out their bill. $312. She placed it in the check holder and brought it to the table, setting it down in front of the leader. "Whenever you're ready, no rush," she said. "Thank you so much for coming in tonight." The leader opened the check holder and looked at the total. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a wallet. It was thick with cash. Denise could see multiple $100 bills inside. Her heart beat a little faster. This was it. This was the moment that would determine whether she could pay her bills this week, or have to choose which ones to delay again. The leader pulled out the bills slowly, deliberately. His movements were calm and measured, like everything else about him. He counted out the money with careful precision. 100, 200, 300, 310, 312. Exact change. Down to the last dollar. He placed the bills on top of the check holder and closed it. He looked up at Denise, and for a moment their eyes met. Those sharp, calculating eyes that had been watching her all evening. "Thank you for your service," he said. His voice was polite, professional, final. He stood up and buttoned his suit jacket. The other 4 men immediately followed his lead, standing in unison like they had rehearsed it. They didn't look at Denise. They simply fell into formation around their leader. The 5 of them walked toward the door in the same quiet, authoritative way they had entered. The leader pushed open the door, and the cold November air rushed in one more time. One by one, they filed out into the darkness. The door closed behind them with a soft click. They were gone. Denise stood there holding her notepad, staring at the check holder on the table. For a few seconds, she didn't move. She couldn't move. She just stood there listening to the silence of the empty restaurant. Finally, she walked slowly to the table. Her hand reached out and picked up the check holder. She opened it. The bills were still there. She counted them again, even though she already knew what she would find. $312. The exact amount of the bill. Not 320. Not 350. Not 400. Just 312. No tip. Nothing. Zero. Denise felt something crack inside her chest. It wasn't anger exactly. It was more like defeat. Like the wind had been knocked out of her. 2 hours. 2 solid hours of constant work. Running back and forth between the kitchen and their table. Making sure everything was perfect. Keeping their water glasses full. Cleaning up spills. Smiling. Being professional. Being excellent at her job. And nothing. She had been so sure. The bill was over $300. These men were clearly wealthy. The suits they wore probably cost more than Denise made in 2 months. That wallet had been thick with $100 bills. They could have easily left $50. 60. Even 20 would have been something. But they left nothing. Denise felt tears starting to form in her eyes. She blinked hard, trying to push them back. She looked up at the ceiling and took a deep breath. Then another. She was not going to cry. She had been through worse than this. Much worse. Her mind started racing through her finances. She had been counting on this tip. Really counting on it. She had already planned in her head what she would do with the money. Her son's shoes. Her daughter's music book. Maybe enough left over to make a payment on the electric bill. Now what? She would have to tell her son his shoes would have to wait another week. Maybe 2 weeks. She would have to keep stuffing cardboard inside the bottoms to cover the holes, hoping they would last a little longer. She would have to see the disappointment in her daughter's eyes when she explained again that piano lessons weren't possible right now. The tears threatened again. Denise bit her lip hard. No, she was not doing this. Feeling sorry for herself would not pay the bills. It would not put food on the table. It would not help her children. Maybe they didn't understand American tipping culture. That thought crossed her mind. They were Korean. Maybe in Korea, things worked differently. Maybe they didn't know that servers in America depend on tips. That the base pay is low and tips make up most of the income. But that didn't feel right. These men didn't seem like tourists or new immigrants. They moved like they knew exactly where they were and how things worked. The leader's English was accented but confident. These were not people unfamiliar with American customs. Maybe they just didn't care. That thought hurt more. Maybe they looked at her and saw just another waitress. Just another servant bringing them food. Not worth acknowledging with a tip. Not worth thinking about. Denise knew that feeling. She had experienced it before. The invisible woman. The person people look through instead of at. The one who exists only to serve, and then disappears from memory the moment she's no longer useful. She stood there at the table, holding the money in her hand. $312. She needed to put this in the register. Close out the check. Start her closing duties. Lock up the restaurant. Go home to her babies. But for just a moment, she allowed herself to feel the disappointment. The crushing weight of another setback. Another hope that didn't work out. Another example of how hard she could work and still end up with nothing extra to show for it. Her feet ached. Her back hurt. Her head was pounding. She was so tired she could barely think straight. She had been awake for almost 19 hours. She still had to close the restaurant, drive home, and then wake up in a few hours to do it all over again. For a brief moment, Denise felt absolutely exhausted. Not just physically tired. Soul tired. The kind of tired that comes from working as hard as you possibly can and still feeling like you're drowning. But she shook her head and straightened her shoulders. She walked to the register and put the money in. She closed out the check. She printed the receipt and filed it away. She went back to the table to start clearing it. All those dishes. All that food. Some of it barely touched. She stacked the plates carefully, gathering the used napkins and chopsticks. She wiped the edges of the table where sauce had dripped. As she worked, She was already trying to figure out her budget for the next week. Which bill could she delay? Which one was most urgent? How could she stretch the groceries a little further? Maybe pasta 3 nights in a row instead of 2. Maybe skip buying fresh fruit and stick to the canned stuff that was cheaper. These were the thoughts running through her mind as she cleared the table. These were the calculations she was always making. The endless puzzle of trying to make too little money cover too many expenses. She picked up the empty water glasses. She gathered the small side dish plates. She moved methodically, numbly, just trying to get through the closing routine so she could go home. She reached for the last plate. The large dinner plate that had been sitting directly in front of where the leader had sat. She lifted it up to add it to her stack of dirty dishes. That's when she saw it. Underneath the plate, there was a piece of paper, folded neatly. Denise stopped. She set down the dishes she was holding. Her heart started beating faster. With trembling hands, she picked up the folded paper. What was this? Had someone left their receipt? A business card? She unfolded it carefully. It was a handwritten note. The handwriting was neat and precise. She began to read, and with each word, her hands shook harder. The note was written in clean, careful handwriting. Each letter was formed precisely, like the person who wrote it took their time to make sure every word was clear. Denise's eyes moved across the page, and as she read, her whole world shifted. Dear Miss Denise, please forgive me for not leaving a tip on the table. What I have to give you cannot be left in the open. Under the napkin holder to your left, you will find an envelope. This is for you. I watched you tonight. I watched how you work with pride, how you treat others with respect, how you smile even though I can see the tiredness in your eyes. You remind me of someone very important from my past. My name is Mr. Park, and I am a businessman. Many years ago, when I first came to America with nothing, a black woman working at a diner showed me kindness when others would not. I had no money to pay for my meal. I was desperate and hungry. She paid for my food from her own pocket and told me to pay it forward when I could. I never forgot her. I never found her again to thank her, but I have been looking for ways to honor her memory ever since. Tonight, I see that same kindness in you. I see someone who works hard, who cares about others, and who deserves better than what life has given so far. Please accept this gift. Use it to build a better future for yourself and your family. This is not charity. This is one human being helping another, just as someone once helped me. You do not owe me anything. Just remember to help others when you can, as you already do every day with your kindness. With respect, Mr. Park. Denise read the note once. Her hands were shaking so badly, she could barely hold the paper. She read it again. Her heart was pounding in her chest like it was trying to break through her ribs. She read it a third time because her brain couldn't process what her eyes were seeing. The napkin holder. Look under the napkin holder to your left. She set the note down on the table. Her hands were trembling as she reached for the metal napkin holder that sat on the left side of the table. It was one of those simple restaurant napkin holders, nothing special. She had refilled it 100 times and never thought twice about it. She lifted it with both hands because she didn't trust herself not to drop it. Underneath was a thick manila envelope. Denise stared at it for a moment. Her breathing was coming fast and shallow. She picked up the envelope. It was heavy, heavier than she expected. She turned it over in her hands. There was nothing written on the outside, just a plain envelope sealed. She opened it slowly, carefully, like it might disappear if she moved too fast. Inside were stacks of money, $100 bills, neatly arranged, bound together with paper bands like they had come straight from a bank. Denise pulled the money out with shaking fingers. The stacks felt thick and solid in her hands. This was real. This was actual money. Not a check. Not a promise. Cash. She started counting. Her fingers fumbled with the bills. One stack. $2,000. Another stack. $4,000. Another. $6,000. She kept counting. $8,000. $10,000. $12,000. $14,000. $16,000. $18,000. $20,000. $20,000. She counted it again because this could not be real. Things like this did not happen in real life. They didn't happen to people like her. She must have miscounted. She must have been so tired that she was seeing things wrong. But the second count came out the same. $20,000. Denise's legs suddenly felt like they couldn't hold her weight anymore. She pulled out one of the chairs at the table and sat down hard. The chair scraped against the floor with a loud sound that echoed in the empty restaurant. She sat there holding $20,000 in her hands. Her mind was spinning. The room felt like it was tilting. She couldn't catch her breath. This was more money than she had ever seen in one place in her entire life. This was more than she made in a whole year at both her jobs combined. This was enough to change everything. She looked at the note again. Read it one more time. Mr. Park, a businessman. He came to America with nothing. A black woman at a diner had bought him a meal when he was hungry and desperate. She told him to pay it forward. He never forgot. Denise thought about that woman. She didn't even know her name. Mr. Park didn't know her name either. Just a waitress at a diner who saw a hungry person and helped. Probably spent less than $10 of her own money. She probably never thought about it again. She probably had no idea that the young Korean man she helped that day would remember her for the rest of his life. And now, decades later, that simple act of kindness had traveled through time and landed here. In this Korean barbecue restaurant in Atlanta. In Denise's hands. Denise felt tears coming, and this time she didn't try to stop them. They rolled down her cheeks and dropped onto the table. But these weren't tears of sadness or disappointment like before. These were different. These were tears of disbelief, of relief, of overwhelming gratitude. She sat there in that empty restaurant at almost midnight, crying and holding $20,000, reading a note from a stranger who had seen her, really seen her, not just a waitress, not just someone bringing food to a table. He had seen her character, her hard work, her kindness despite her struggles. For someone who spent every day feeling invisible, this was almost more valuable than the money itself. Someone had noticed. Someone had cared enough to do something extraordinary. Denise carefully put the money back in the envelope. She folded the note and put it in there too. She held the envelope against her chest and just sat there for a long moment, trying to process what had just happened. Her whole life had just changed. In one single moment, everything was different. But as Denise sat there in the quiet restaurant, holding that envelope, another feeling started to creep in alongside the gratitude and disbelief. Doubt, confusion, a moral question she couldn't ignore. She thought about those 5 men, the way they had walked in, the expensive suits, the sunglasses at night, the quiet authority that made everyone in the restaurant uncomfortable, the way the other customers had hurried to leave, the whispered comments from the kitchen staff about how these men looked serious, possibly dangerous, possibly connected to things that weren't exactly legal. Denise wasn't naive. She had grown up in rough neighborhoods. She knew what organized crime looked like, even when it was dressed in expensive clothes. These men had that energy, that presence. They weren't just successful businessmen. There was something else there, something harder, something that came from living in a world where power and respect were earned through fear as much as through success. So the question became, should she keep this money? If Mr. Park and his associates were involved in illegal activities, if this money came from crime, was it right for her to accept it? What kind of example would that set for her children? She was always telling them to do the right thing, to be honest, to have integrity even when it was difficult. But what was the right thing here? She looked at the envelope in her hands. $20,000. Money that could fix the heater so her babies wouldn't be cold this winter. Money that could buy her son proper shoes and her daughter those piano lessons she dreamed about. Money that could pay off the bills that kept her awake at night. Money that could let her cut back on her hours and spend more time with her kids. Maybe even go to school and build a better future. Was it wrong to want that? Was it wrong to accept help when you desperately needed it? Denise thought about her mother. What would she say? Her mother had always been strict about doing right. But her mother had also accepted help when it was offered. When the church collected money to help pay for Denise's school supplies, her mother had accepted it with gratitude. When neighbors brought food after her mother got sick, she had accepted that too. Baby, her mother used to say, there's a difference between charity that makes you feel small and help that comes from genuine care. Learn to know the difference. And when someone offers you real help, accept it with grace and pass it forward when you can. Denise picked up the note and read it again. One line stood out. This is not charity. This is one human being helping another, just as someone once helped me. She thought about that unnamed woman at the diner all those years ago. When she saw a hungry young Korean immigrant who couldn't pay for his meal, she didn't ask questions. She didn't demand to know his background or what he might become in the future. She didn't judge whether he deserved her help. She just saw a human being in need and she helped him. That woman didn't know Mr. Park would end up wealthy. She didn't know he might be involved in questionable business. She just saw someone hungry and acted from her heart. She paid for his meal, probably around $10, and told him to pay it forward. That was it. Simple human kindness. No conditions. No judgment. If that woman had known who Mr. Park might become, would she still have helped him? Denise wanted to believe the answer was yes. Because helping someone shouldn't depend on who they are or what they do. It should depend on recognizing their humanity. Mr. Park had carried the memory of that kindness for decades. It hadn't made him a different person. It hadn't changed whatever path his life had taken. But it had planted something in his heart. A seed of gratitude. A desire to honor that gift by passing it forward. Now that chain had reached Denise. She realized something sitting there. This wasn't really about Mr. Park at all. This was about that woman in the diner. This was her gift, traveling through time. She had helped someone without knowing where that help would go. Without controlling what happened next. She had just acted with kindness and let the universe take care of the rest. Denise made her decision. She would accept the gift. Not because she was ignoring the questions about who Mr. Park might be or what he might be involved in, but because she understood that kindness doesn't come with conditions. That woman at the diner didn't put conditions on her help. Mr. Park wasn't putting conditions on his gift. He was simply passing forward what had been given to him. And Denise would do the same. She would accept this help with gratitude. She would use it to build a better life for her children. And she would continue the chain by helping others whenever she could, just as she had always tried to do. This money represented something bigger than Mr. Park's current life or business. It represented a chain of human kindness that stretched back decades. It represented the idea that good actions don't disappear. They travel forward, touching lives in ways we can never predict or control. Denise carefully secured the envelope in her purse. She finished her closing duties at the restaurant, moving through the familiar routine with a sense of calm she hadn't felt in years. She wiped down the tables. She swept the floor. She turned off the lights in the dining room. She checked that everything was locked up properly. She drove home through the quiet Atlanta streets, gripping the steering wheel with hands that had finally stopped shaking. When she got to her apartment, she checked on her sleeping children. Her daughter was curled up with her favorite stuffed animal. Her son had kicked his blankets off like he always did. Denise covered him gently. She sat on the edge of her bed and took out the envelope one more time, just to make sure it was real, just to convince herself this had actually happened. $20,000. A note from a stranger who had seen her worth. Denise lay down next to her sleeping babies and cried quietly. But these tears were different from any she had cried before. These were tears of relief. Tears of hope, tears of gratitude for a gift she had never expected and a kindness she would never forget. Tomorrow, her life would begin to change. But tonight, she just let herself feel the weight lift. Just for a moment, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, things were going to be okay. In the weeks and months that followed, Denise used the money exactly the way Mr. Park had asked her to. She used it to build a better future. The first thing she did was pay off her debts. All those bills that had been piling up on her kitchen table, the ones that kept her awake at night worrying, she paid every single one. The electric bill, the water bill, the medical bills from her son's ear infection, the credit card she had maxed out buying groceries. She paid them all and felt a weight lift off her shoulders that she had been carrying for years. She called someone to fix the heater in their apartment. For the first time in 2 winters, her children would be warm. She wouldn't have to pile extra blankets on their beds and watch her breath fog in the cold morning air while getting them ready for school. She took her son to the shoe store and bought him 2 pairs of new shoes, good ones that fit properly. When he put them on and walked around the store, he had the biggest smile on his face. "Mama, these don't hurt," he said. "And there's no holes." Denise had to turn away so he wouldn't see her cry. She signed her daughter up for piano lessons, beginner classes at the community center. Nothing fancy, but her daughter was so excited she could barely sit still. "Really, Mama? Really?" she kept asking. "Yes, baby," Denise told her. "Really?" But Denise didn't just spend the money on immediate needs. She was smarter than that. She enrolled herself in community college, business management classes. She had always been good at managing things, at organizing, at understanding how to make systems work efficiently. Now she was going to learn how to do it officially. She kept her job at the Korean barbecue restaurant. Mr. and Mrs. Kim were so relieved when she told them she wasn't leaving. "You are family," Mrs. Kim said, hugging her tight. Denise didn't tell them about the money. That was private. But she did cut back her hours at the grocery store so she could attend her classes. This meant less income, but with her debts paid off and some money saved, she could afford it. For the first time in years, Denise had breathing room. She could sleep more than 4 hours a night. She could spend more time with her children. She could invest in her education and her future. But the biggest change wasn't in her bank account or her circumstances. The biggest change was in how Denise saw the world. She understood something now that she hadn't fully grasped before. You never really know how your actions affect other people's lives. That waitress who had bought Mr. Park a meal decades ago probably never thought about it again. It was just a small thing she did on a random day. Maybe $10 from her own pocket for a stranger who was hungry. She had no idea that young man would remember her for the rest of his life. She had no idea he would become successful and spend years looking for ways to honor what she had done. She had no idea that her simple act of kindness would eventually change the life of a struggling single mother in Atlanta decades later. But that's exactly what happened. That's the power of kindness. It doesn't just affect the moment. It creates waves that move forward through time, touching lives in ways we never see. Denise wanted to share these lessons with everyone. If she could, she would tell the whole world what she learned. First, stop judging people by how they look. When those 5 men walked into the restaurant that night, they looked intimidating. They looked possibly dangerous. Denise felt nervous. But one of them turned out to hold incredible kindness in his heart. We do this all the time. We see someone and make instant decisions about who they are based on their clothes, their appearance, their accent, the color of their skin. But everyone has a story we know nothing about. That scary-looking person might be carrying more kindness than someone who looks friendly and safe. Second, your kind actions create effects you never see. That diner waitress planted a seed in Mr. Park's heart that grew for decades. Every time you help someone, every time you show genuine care, every time you treat someone with dignity and respect, you're sending something good into the future. You might never see where it goes, but it goes somewhere. It matters. Your kindness is never wasted. Third, take pride in your work no matter what job you have. Mr. Park didn't give Denise that money randomly. He gave it to her because he watched how she worked. He saw her excellence, her care, her professionalism despite being exhausted. It didn't matter that she was a waitress. What mattered was her character and how she treated people. Whatever work you do, do it well. Do it with pride. You never know who's watching, and you never know what doors might open because someone noticed your character. Fourth, we're all more alike than we are different. Mr. Park was a Korean immigrant. Denise was a Black American woman. Different cultures, different languages, different worlds. But kindness speaks a language everyone understands. The need for dignity, for respect, for help when times are hard. These things are the same for all humans everywhere. When we lead with kindness, all those other differences become less important. Fifth, gratitude has real power. Mr. Park carried gratitude in his heart for decades. He never forgot the woman who helped him. That gratitude didn't make him bitter or resentful. It motivated him. It made him want to honor that gift by helping someone else. When we remember the people who helped us and stay grateful, it changes how we see the world and how we treat others. Sixth, small acts can create massive change. Less than $10 for a meal. That's all that diner waitress probably spent. Such a small thing. But it eventually led to $20,000 and a transformed life for Denise and her children. We think we need to do big, impressive things to make a difference. But the truth is, small acts of genuine kindness can have effects bigger than we ever imagine. We just don't always get to see it happen. Denise looked for Mr. Park after that night. She wanted to thank him properly, to tell him what his gift meant, to let him know she understood the chain of kindness he was honoring. But he never came back to the restaurant. She asked around, but nobody knew anything about him. He had appeared in her life for one night and then vanished like he was never there. But it didn't matter that she never saw him again. His impact on her life was permanent. The change was real. The hope he had given her was real. And the lesson about kindness traveling through time was something she would carry forever. Denise didn't just keep the gift for herself. She understood that the whole point of what Mr. Park had done was to continue the chain. So that's exactly what she did. Whenever she went out to eat, which wasn't often because money was still tight, she started leaving generous tips. Even if it was just a diner or a fast food place, she would leave extra. She knew what it meant to work those jobs. She knew how much those tips mattered. Sometimes she would leave a $20 bill on a $15 check and walk out before the server could thank her. When her neighbor 2 doors down was short on rent 1 month and facing eviction, Denise helped. She didn't have a lot to spare, but she had more than she used to. She slipped $200 under the woman's door with a note that said, "Pay it forward when you can." She started volunteering at the community center, tutoring kids who were struggling in school. She was good at math, always had been, and these kids needed help their parents couldn't afford to pay for. So twice a week, Denise sat with them and helped them understand their homework. She told them they were smart and capable. She told them education could change their lives. She made sure her own children understood the importance of kindness. She told them the story, a simplified version, about how someone had once helped a stranger, and that kindness had traveled through time and eventually reached their family. "We help people not because of what we get back," she told them. "We help people because that's what good humans do." 3 years after that night at the restaurant, Denise graduated from community college. She walked across that stage in her cap and gown with her children, and Miss Beverly from next door cheering in the audience. She had a degree in business management. She had knowledge. She had skills. She had hope. She used what was left of the money, combined with a small business loan, to start her own catering company. Nothing huge. Just Denise and 2 employees at first, cooking good food for events and parties. But she ran it with the same excellence she had shown as a waitress. Every detail mattered. Every customer was treated with respect. Quality was never negotiable. And she made a company policy from day one. She would hire people who were struggling. Single mothers. People coming out of bad situations. People who just needed a fair chance. She paid them fairly. She treated them with dignity. She gave them the same chance that Mr. Park had given her. The business grew slowly but steadily. Word spread that Denise's catering was not just good food, but good people. 5 years after starting, she had 10 employees. Then 15. She was never going to be rich, but she was stable. Her kids had what they needed. She wasn't drowning anymore. The chain of kindness continued. From that unnamed waitress at a diner, to Mr. Park, to Denise, and now to everyone Denise helped. And those people would help others, and on, the ripples spreading out in ways no one could measure or track. The real treasure Mr. Park had given Denise wasn't the $20,000, as much as that money had helped. The real treasure was the message that her kindness had value, that her hard work was seen and appreciated, that she mattered. For someone who had spent years feeling invisible, grinding through each day just trying to survive, feeling like nobody noticed or cared, that message was priceless. Someone had seen her, really seen her. Not just a waitress bringing food, but a human being with dignity and worth and character. That message changed everything. So here's what I want you to understand. You might be listening to this story thinking it's just a nice tale about something that happened to someone else. But you're missing the point. You could be that diner waitress. You could be the person who shows kindness to someone who's struggling, never knowing where that kindness might travel. You could be Mr. Park, looking for ways to honor the help you received in the past by helping someone else now. You could be Denise, working hard and treating people well even when life is difficult, never knowing who's watching or what unexpected blessings might come. The truth is, you're probably all of these at different times in your life. This story isn't really about money. It's about recognizing the power you have right now, today, to impact someone's life through simple kindness. It's about treating people with dignity and respect regardless of who they are or what they can do for you. It's about taking pride in whatever you do, even if it seems small or unimportant to others. What ripples are you creating today? Whose life are you touching in ways you don't even realize? What acts of kindness are you putting into the world that might travel forward into the future long after you're gone? The next time you have a chance to help someone, to show kindness, to treat someone with respect, think about this story. You're not just doing something small and forgettable. You might be starting a chain reaction of goodness that could spread farther and last longer than you ever imagine. And if you're going through hard times right now, if you're working difficult jobs and struggling to make ends meet, if you feel invisible and unimportant, remember Denise. Keep being kind. Keep taking pride in your work. Keep treating others well. You never know who's watching. You never know what unexpected blessings might be waiting just around the corner. The world needs more kindness. It needs more generosity. It needs more people who remember the help they received and pass it forward to others. Be that person. Start your own chain of kindness today. Because in the end, what really matters isn't how much money we make or how important we become. What matters is how we treat other human beings along the way. That's the real treasure hidden under the plate. If this story touched your heart, do me a favor. Hit that like button right now and subscribe to our channel. We bring you real stories with powerful lessons every single day. Stories that remind us what it means to be human. Stories that inspire us to be better. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. Maybe someone who's struggling and needs hope. Maybe someone who's forgotten the power of kindness. Maybe someone who just needs a reminder that good things still happen in this world. Drop a comment below and tell me your story. Have you ever experienced unexpected kindness from a stranger? Have you been the one to help someone when they least expected it? I read every single comment, and I want to hear from you. Tomorrow I've got another incredible story coming your way that you won't want to miss. A story that will challenge how you think and remind you why these human connections matter so much. Until then, remember this. Your kindness matters more than you know. That smile you give to a struggling stranger, that encouraging word you speak to someone who's discouraged, that help you offer when it's inconvenient. All of it creates ripples that spread farther than you can see. You have the power to change someone's life today. Use it. See you in the next one.